Hi, and welcome to the training. Unfortunately, we're not going to be doing the whole session out here in nature, but I wanted to start here and introduce myself. I'm Alyssa Murphy, and I help purpose-seeking professionals like you to break free of the corporate grind and build a successful career rooted in nature, climate, and community. I'm here to empower you to step into a career that not only sustains you, but also contributes positively to the world around you. If you're looking for an expert guide on your journey towards an impactful and fulfilling career, then coaching with me is a fast and powerful way to get unstuck and moving forward into the world of regenerative work. Now, let's begin today's training.
Hi everybody and welcome to this live training. I am so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you are curious about regenerative work and that you're committed to make meaningful change happen through the power of your career. I'm Alyssa Murphy and I am honoured to be your guide today as we explore how to unlock your regenerative calling with my 7-step regenerative career transition checklist. So that is what we are going to be working through today. So the way that you use that checklist is really up to you. You can just sort of have it there as a prompt, but there is space built into it so that you can make some notes as you go through and you can put down some reflections, any action points. You'll also highlight any of the subjects that came up that maybe felt particularly challenging to you or where you felt resistance. So yeah, have that by your side or have some paper with you so we can really make this a working and interactive session. So let's maybe start by getting to know each other a little bit. One of the important principles of regenerative work is place and rooting in place, which is increasingly challenging when we're in these kind of digital interactions. So if you would like, please let me know what part of the world you're in and what the land is like there today. And while you're doing that, I will share where I am. So I'm in a small riverside town in the east of England. It's called Wivenhoe. It's actually named after a wyvern, which is a kind of fictional two-headed dragon. And we live close to the river and there is a very strong smell of mud. It's a really lovely earthy smell, I think, and that's always the kind of smell that lets me know that I'm home, that river mud smell. I also live right next to an area of ancient woodland. It's a small area, but it's incredibly special. You can really feel the kind of magic when you go in there, and I go in there very regularly. So I would love to hear if you'd like to share where you are and what the land is like in your little corner of the world. Okay, so while you're doing that, let's talk about what you're going to learn today. So making radical change happen in your career and aligning your career with regenerative principles is messy and often lonely work. Ask me how I know. I know because that is what the last 2 years looked like for me. And I know because I help clients navigate this exact journey. And while I firmly believe that the messiness is necessary, because what you're actually doing is decorporatizing, which is really just another word for decolonizing, I want to provide you with some powerful signposts along that journey that will both inspire you and give you the confidence that you're headed in the right direction. So while we acknowledge that the journey will never be linear or straightforward, this training will provide you with actionable steps to make a successful transition. So how does that sound? Wow, I've got some lovely messages here from before we move on where people are. So Amberine is watching from Washington State, where there are lots of trees and moss and refreshing rains. We have Ines who's joining from Gothenburg in Sweden, and she says that she can smell the lovely forest scent right from her balcony. Wow. And we have Sarah in the north of Portugal. She says it's green, but currently everything is on fire. My goodness. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. And yeah, that's an important reminder, I think, of why we're here, why we're doing this work, right? To have that kind of impact. So thank you for sharing those stories. Right. How this is going to work. I have mentioned this briefly, but just so that everybody is clear. I want you to listen to the concepts that I'm sharing. I want you to be able to just absorb them, but I also want you to pay attention to how they feel in your body, because for the purposes of this training, I'm much more interested in how you embody the concepts than any kind of sense that you're ticking off a list and you're getting through a to-do list and that you've done it all. That's really not how we are going to approach this kind of work. So just listen out for what ideas stimulate you, and you can capture any of that right there on the checklist or in your notes. So there are two things that you may want to pay particular attention to. Number one, where are you experiencing resistance? So I have a coach that I work with who likes to say, when I'm giving you advice that you really don't want to hear, pay particular attention. And I think that's a really important point. It doesn't mean that she's always right. It doesn't always mean that I'm going to take that advice, but it's always very interesting to know why I feel resistant. And the second thing to notice is think about what one tiny step you can take in that direction for each of the steps that we're going to cover today. Don't try to make a big leap or achieve all at once. Just really think about one tiny little step that you can take in the right direction. Of course, ask questions as we go through. I'm going to do my best to keep my eyes on the chat, but that's really what I'm here for. Yes, I'm going to teach you concepts, I'm going to share my experience, but I really want to make sure that you get out of this experience what you came for. So make sure that you use that chat, ask me questions at any point as we go through, and anything that I don't get to, we'll have time at the end for Q&A, and I've also got a few questions that were pre-submitted. So if you're watching a replay right now, listen right the way through to the end and I will answer your question at the end. One final point on purpose. So I do go into this in a bit more depth in the podcast, but I think it's really important to define what we mean by purpose or calling right here at the beginning. And I won't go into it too much, but I want to explain that to me, I think purpose has been kind of co-opted into this sort of almost unattainable standard. And there's this idea that we all have this one completely unique purpose, and that if we don't find that purpose, we'll never be fulfilled, we'll never be kind of self-actualized. And that is not at all how I see purpose, because I think it moves us into an almost consumerist kind of mindset where we've got to go out and get this thing, we've got to achieve, we've got to do more. To me, purpose is really a feeling state. So when you find your calling, I don't think that's a fixed, immovable thing, and this is what I'm doing now for the rest of my life. I think it's about your alignment with your values and the work that you do. I see it as a relationship and a connection. And in a work context, what I think that means is that when you are in purpose, or when you are in calling, your work is deeply aligned with your values, with nature, and with the kind of world that you want to experience. Okay, let's begin. So I would like us to start with a moment of shared stillness. So I'm going to walk you through a short relaxation exercise that we can all do together. I've actually just noticed that Amberine is saying here that she's right in the midst of personal and professional transition and feeling pulled in lots of different directions. She's dealing with crisis and stress and fear and grief. Oh my goodness, thank you, and being so open about what you're experiencing. I think that's resonating with Raoul as well, and the need for this session. Yes, and it's important that we approach not just this session but all of that transition in regenerative work from a slightly different place, because if we try to approach it from our rational, logical brains, we're going to end up exactly where we started. They're what served us so far. So we're going to tap in to something a little bit deeper. We're going to tap into our nervous systems and into our bodies and see if we can find the wisdom that they have for us. So let's start with this short exercise to calm our chattery minds down a little bit and drop into our bodies. If you don't like breathing exercises, that's absolutely fine. I just invite you to sit in stillness as we do this. So begin by grounding your feet on the floor, or feeling the weight of your body, however you're positioned. Now I want you to pick a focal point out in front of you, perhaps just above the screen. and focus all of your attention on that one single point. So just send all of your awareness and all of your attention to that one focal point out in front of you. And let everything else soften. Let all your peripheral vision soften, blur, and just focus on that point. You may notice that immediately doing this, there's a sense of relaxation. There's a sense of quieting. You almost can't help it. It's just something that happens at the subconscious level. Just as you stay focused on that point, just be aware of your peripheral vision, all that softness, all that gentleness around you. And then if you're comfortable, you can go ahead and close your eyes. Let's just breathe together. And inhaling, slowly, slowly exhaling. Feels good to you, you can do a little sigh. As you exhale, just breathing at your own slow and gentle pace. Take a moment to notice the point between the end of your exhale and the beginning of your next inhale. A little pause there. A little still point. Just enjoy the stillness at the end of the exhale. If you like, the next time you reach that point, you can see if you can just extend that pause just a little longer. Slowing right down. Inhaling, exhaling, being in that stillness. One more moment here. When you're ready, you might just want to move your body a little bit, and you can open your eyes. You can keep your eyes closed if you prefer just to listen to me, and just come back into the room. So, congratulations. You have already begun to practice step 1. You are creating space for change. This step is absolutely essential. Shift for me happened, as for many people, during the pandemic. Actually, it started before the pandemic because I was pregnant with twins, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't the worst twin pregnancy, but it certainly wasn't easy. And my world went from being very busy, very busy entrepreneur, working long hours, doing all the things, traveling all around, and it very quickly began to slow down. And it began to shrink because I literally couldn't travel anymore. Before long, I couldn't even commute to London. And by the end of it, honestly, it was a mission for me to make it just to the end of the garden. So my world became very small, even before all of our worlds became much smaller during the pandemic. And as life slowed down and kind of cuddled in on itself, I found that there were some really powerful questions waiting for me there. You see, shift can't happen without that space, without pause. So if you're frustrated that change is not happening, if you're feeling overwhelmed, as some of you have shared in the chat, with all of the things, the transition, the possibilities, the ideas, the paths, the first thing you really must take seriously is to slow down. Because you can't plan, you can't move to action, you can't take next steps until you've found that space and that pause. And quite honestly, it's not easy to do. It's really not. It goes completely counter to all of our cultures. So here are some different approaches to making this a priority. So these are in your checklist. So the first is, you might just need to get quite organised about this and actually really set aside dedicated time for self-exploration. You don't have to call it that. You can call it whatever you feel comfortable with, but literally think about putting that in your calendar. However much you think you can do, and just maybe building it up. Maybe you start with a practice of kind of 10 minutes a day and you build up from there. Bonus points if you take that time in a quiet, natural setting. And yes, as Sarah has said, sometimes your body makes you slow down when you don't listen to the signs. Absolutely, absolutely. And we don't want to get to that point if we can help it. Most people actually will wait until their body literally says no more, until they get sick, until something goes wrong or they burn out. Please don't let it get to that stage if you can possibly help it. And this is how, by creating that space and by slowing down. And the more you can do that in nature, in my personal experience, it's almost like you get 10 times the benefit of practicing that stillness anywhere else. It's really quite incredible. And you may need to, as part of this, so yes, say yes to that time and that space, but also start really saying no to a lot of things, to disconnect from busyness. And that's incredibly hard to do as well. You know, there are few opportunities in life when things shut down for us. And of course that came with an awful lot of tragedy as well. But for many of us, it was, you know, the first time that we were let free of so many obligations and so much pace and so much busyness. So you're going to have to cultivate that yourself. You're going to have to think about what you can say no to in order to say yes to the new possibilities in your career. And there's a lot of agreement here around the health point, and Raul is saying yes, that's his case too, and that, you know, health issues lately have been the most important sign that I need to change. You know, sometimes we need those indicators from our body. I really believe, I would say, the sort of the foundation of all of the coaching that I do is that our bodies know, our bodies have this wisdom, and we need to learn to be in conversation with them. So this is a really important step. Say no to that busyness. And as Ines beautifully says, that is saying yes to ourselves. So take a few moments and maybe in your notes or on the sheet, maybe see if you can make a commitment to yourself to take some of this time. And if you like, you can share that commitment in that chat. You know, and it can be so micro. I have 3 small kids. I find it incredibly difficult to find moments for stillness and peace. They have to be so micro when the children are around. You know, sometimes it's just like looking into my cup of tea for a few sips of that cup of tea, or just concentrating on one deep breath. So they can, you know, it can be tiny. That's an important principle here. Tiny steps, but all in the right direction. So let me know what steps or what commitment you might be able to take. Okay, so then let's take a look at step 2. All right, this is not a fun one. I'm going to tell you in advance, this is not a fun one. All right, step 2 is to develop a financial transition plan. Okay, Alyssa, did you just go back to business, Alyssa, for a moment there? Yes, I did. For the purposes of this next step, I am going to be in entrepreneurial startup mode, and there's a really good reason for it, because the number one fear that I have heard from clients and from people making this transition that they have in doing this work is financial fear. I read an article just this morning in the Telegraph here in the UK about someone who had escaped the trap of their £200,000 a year job. Okay, there's a lot we could say about that, but you know, money is a trap that holds us either in corporate jobs or in a corporate mentality. There's just no two ways about it. And at the same time, we all, I'm going to assume, still exist in a reality where we need to pay bills and we need to put food on the table and support ourselves, support our families. So, you know, financial fear is real. And when that fear comes up, you know, that is us trying to protect ourselves, because it can feel incredibly risky to embark on this kind of journey. So this is why I recommend fairly early on putting together a financial transition plan. And what exactly that plan looks like is obviously going to depend very much on your personal circumstances. You may be in a position where you have some kind of financial cushion, or you're able to work towards a financial cushion, in which case I would say really think of that cushion or those savings that you're willing to invest. That's the key, as an investment. Think of it as startup capital for the startup that is you, right? The startup that is your regenerative career. And set boundaries for yourself. Make a plan. How much are you willing to invest? How long a runway, I'm going to keep using this startup language here, how long a runway does that give you to do the steps that I'm going to come on to next? The real exploration and play and curiosity and finding your way in this new world. How can you use whatever financial resources you have to enable that? And it may be that you simply don't have the financial resources that allow you to do that. And then you can look at, where can I find flexibility while maintaining a source of income that allows me to explore new possibilities. Okay, so there are lots of different ways that we can look at this. Also would recommend episode 4 and 5 of the podcast. I have a really good conversation with Ryan James, who is a regenerative guide, about not only these sort of practical financial steps, but also about the way that we can leave a legacy for future generations if it's not something that we're able to embark on ourselves. So having that plan in place is just a way of saying, fear, I see you. I know you're afraid, and we are safe. I have a plan. So that every time that fear pops its head up, you can say, it's okay. I hear you, and we have a plan. Does that make sense? Is this fear something that resonates? I'd be really curious to hear if this financial fear is as real as I think it is and have heard from a lot of conversations, because I think money is just such a powerful way to control people, and at the same time it's a reality that we have to deal with. So it's really helpful having this plan in place, and that plan may change and it may need to expand. That is really not important. The purpose here is to give yourself permission. It's to give yourself that feeling of safety so that the change that you are seeking has the time and the space and the attention that it needs. Because without that real commitment to change, and without finding a way to make yourself feel safe in the change, here's what happens. You end up rushing to action. You end up trying to very quickly get to some kind of destination, some solution. Look, I'm in my new career now. You take the first job that comes along, right? And then you end up in a new version of the same system that you were in before. And I know that's not what you're looking for here. Okay, so does anyone have any questions on the financial plan? Anything you want me to go more into detail? Is this making sense? Let me know. I'm gonna have a drink of water while you do that. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm gonna assume you're like, enough of the sensible safety stuff, Alyssa. Let's move on to the play. Yes, let's do that. Okay, step number 3, my personal favorite. Embrace playful exploration. So these next 2 points, 3 and 4, are where it really starts to get fun, if we can allow it to feel fun. Okay, if we can let go of some of the fear and some of the conditioning that says we're lost. Brendan says, get out of my head. No, I like it in here. Okay, so let's play. So step 3 and step 4. So step 3 is play, step 4 is curiosity. And really they go hand in hand. They dance together. But there is one crucial difference. Play is something to engage with purely for its own sake. So when you see children play, I'm super interested in early years development, and I've had quite a bit of experience through my own children. And when you watch children play, the beautiful thing about it is they are not interested in the final outcome. So you see a child playing with bricks, they are far more interested in, what does a brick taste like? What happens if I put a brick on its side? What happens if I put a big pile of bricks all together? What's that sound like when I push them over? What does it feel like in my hand? What happens if I throw it? They are far more interested in all of those experiences and just being in the play than they are in any kind of final result. And often it's us as adults that come along and get in the way of that play because we say something like, oh look, you're building a castle, right? Because we've been so conditioned to get to the end product, to the end destination, right? We are, in this step, we are embracing play purely for the sake of play. And what could be more counter to corporate conditioning than to simply play? It's beautiful. So when it comes to curiosity, you can allow yourself to be a little bit more purposeful and analytical and start making some connections between your interests and possible new directions. We'll come on to that in a moment, but for the play, we're going to keep this really pure. It is important that you don't kind of try and map this out, you don't explain it to yourself or to anyone else, you simply engage. So for me, this play looked like a lot of time in nature. Now I can see that from my vantage point now, but at the time I wasn't even really aware of this as a theme, which is probably laughable to any of you that knew me at the time because it was kind of glaringly obvious. But I was just saying yes to experiences that my body wanted to say yes to. So, an example, I went forest bathing for the first time, which does not mean swimming. It means being in nature. It's a practice of really connecting and immersing in nature. I hosted several woodland retreats. I hosted play dates for grown-ups. I did a lot of gardening. I started to learn around foraging and preserving foods. I wrote a poem in the forest, and all of these things brought me back to nature. That was the consistent theme, which now makes total sense, right? Sitting here with you, it's clear. My work is literally helping people to align their career with nature. But at the time, whenever that, what is the point of this, Alyssa voice snuck in, I couldn't answer the question. It felt really uncomfortable to me because I kept trying to kind of extrapolate out to, okay, so are you going to be a forest bathing guide, Alyssa? No, I just wanted to go and have that experience. Okay, and now I can see there was such a powerful theme of connection to nature that is now underpinning everything that I do. So I just invite you to play for play's sake. Yes, making time to play with my son equals regeneration. Absolutely. What better definition could there be? But it is hard, and I would love to hear, does play feel natural to you? Is it something that comes easily? Even, the example you gave here, playing with my son, some people find it very difficult to actually let go and play with their children. Is play something that you've thought about actively in your career? Is it something you've tried? Let me know. What is your relationship with play like? I'd love to hear a bit more of that. And let me tell you that I think it can feel very, very uncomfortable. And it took for me a lot of courage to stick with it. I'd gone from being a very successful, well-respected CEO and founder in a defined sector to wandering around the woods. And that thought kept coming up. I'm like, I've just become, this witchy woman that wanders around the woods. What have I done? What have I done? But somehow I found the courage to continue with that play and to keep showing up for it, even when I was experiencing a lot of resistance. So let me just, if this is something that is a challenge for you, let me be your signpost here and tell you that yes, play is the way. Trust it, and I really believe that one day it will make perfect sense to you. So what this can look like: engaging in creative activities, trying new experiences simply because they spark joy or curiosity, and just allowing yourself to get lost. I often had this recurring thought of, I'm lost. I'm completely lost. And yes, I was. And actually that's exactly where I needed to be. Amberine's saying here, no, not at all easy. It is something you're supposed to grow out of in order to be a more productive adult. Yes, and most of us have done a very good job of growing out of it and being productive adults, right? And it's time to think about that. I like to play a lot, as I'm also an artist, and playfulness is very important. But when you're on a corporate job, you forget about that, and stress is a block. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It becomes harder and harder to make a commitment to that play. But what I would say is that I think that as you move deeper into your regenerative career, you'll find that the gap between the play and the work shrinks. And now I find that most, not all, but most of my work I get the same feeling of play that I got from wandering around the woods. Raoul said, I tend to think that playing is losing time, and I find it very challenging to engage on activities that are not productive while trying to find a way to being productive the regenerative way. Yes, that's really, really well put. Yes. You know what? I think there is a way to be productive the regenerative way, but I think we have to go, I don't want to say to the other extreme, we have to allow ourselves the possibility that it will not be productive, that it may just be something we do for enjoyment and exploration and discovery. Okay, I think that is a really nice point for me to bring on a surprise guest for you. So I'm going to bring on Ines, who said hello to us earlier from Gothenburg in Sweden. Ines is a client of mine, and Ines embraced this playful invitation to a degree that I have not seen with any other client. I would say she's an absolute expert at it, and I invited her on so that she can talk to you a little bit about what that has looked like for her, and yeah, give you a little taste of what kind of play can look like in action. So let's welcome Ines, and I will be with you in the chat as Ines shares her experience.
Hi, Alyssa. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Ines. So over to you. Tell us about your journey. Tell us about play in your career journey.
Yes, well, I have to say that thanks to you, play has really become second nature to me. But I remember at the beginning, it was definitely a very scary process, and it did feel like I had no clue of what I was doing, and it was very intimidating. But in the end, I noticed that it just felt like very expansive and fun, and it just felt like new sides of me came up. And so I'd say that play took the form of being in front of the camera, so kind of like photography and modeling. I really discovered that I enjoyed seeing different sides of myself, of my personality on picture. I found it very powerful. And so that took the form of, for instance, doing a laundry room photo shoot on a Monday morning with one of my photographers, which was quite funny because I had seen these inspiration pictures on Pinterest, and I had this mood board, and so I really wanted to recreate this feeling, and so I was wearing these white sheets around my body. I was bare, like from had my bare shoulders and bare legs, and I was sitting in this metal bathtub in our collective laundry room here in this apartment building I'm living in. And the thing is that I thought I had booked this time slot just for this session, but some other people had apparently also booked the laundry machines. So actually we had two people coming in. So the first one was an older lady in her maybe 70s or 80s, and who looked very shocked and disapproving of what was going on there, because I was wrapped in sheets, but it looked like I was naked as I was sitting there in my metal bathtub. And so I really didn't feel comfortable in what we were doing. This was really just exploring and having fun. It didn't feel okay at all in a way. So I just said, we're art students and this is an arts project for university. And she just shook her head and continued loading the laundry machine. But then half an hour later, we had a completely different reaction from a woman, maybe in her, just absolutely loved what we were doing. I said the same thing, we're art students and this is a project, and she just absolutely just lightened up and said how that brought her a lot of joy. As she said to us, she was going through some breakup and hard times, and that this was exactly what she needed to see on a Monday morning, and that she was going to post about this on her Facebook profile. So just to say that there were two completely different reactions, but it was a very playful atmosphere in the end. And so that was one time, being playful in front of the camera. I've also been just playing with the thought of doing a bridal photo shoot. So wearing wedding dresses, because who wouldn't want to look fabulous and gorgeous in these dresses? And I think it's something we grew up in, especially for women. I think when we're little girls and we see these princessy-like dresses, and a part of me had been for a long time thinking, well, this is nonsense, and I need to wait for when I get married to wear a wedding dress. Until you told me, well, what if? So not the kind of anxious what if, but a more playful what if. What if I just did it anyway? It ended with me contacting a local bridal dress designer here in Gothenburg, who just happened to be needing a model for a photo shoot. And so there I was, wearing fabulous wedding dresses, and I felt like it was just kind of like second nature to me. It just felt so playful, and it didn't need to make sense. I was just really embracing the experience and these new feelings as well, of just feeling completely free and beaming.
honest. And well, I have some other experiences as well, has been recording a reggaeton video with one of my friends who's an excellent dancer, and I asked her if she could come up with a choreography for this song I really liked. And same thing here, I just when it was really about being playful with the energy, and then being able to see that myself on the video, like seeing the energy I wanted to transmit. And so for me, that kind of playfulness was a way to discover, like I said before, different sides of my personality, which I would not have had, I think, which I didn't have with the typical corporate mindset.
Yeah, and what I really noticed, as your coach, was when we started working together, you had, I'm sure you're happy for me to share, like a lot of fear around this break that you were, like this conscious break that you were taking in your career. You were very aware of how that would be perceived by others. You weren't even kind of really comfortable talking to people about it and about what you were doing. And I really noticed that as you learned to play and you let yourself play, your energy around that just really shifted to, I mean, tell me where I'm wrong, but now I see that it's like, that's just really not something that feels weighty or heavy to you. It feels to me like that play really unlocked, that we just don't have to take careers quite as seriously as we've all been conditioned to do.
Yes, exactly. Just taking it with a lot of lightness. And I think when it comes to career transition, we also grew up with the idea that career is something serious. It's supposed to, we're supposed to make an income from it, and we have to be very professional. And so I think we just almost suppress parts of ourselves, and just like when we're children, and then they start conditioning us and putting us into these frames. And so I felt sometimes that, especially in the corporate world, we're allowed to be creative, but make sure it's within a certain box. Like, it needs to be creative, but within this box. Whereas when it's this type of playful exploration, was just, it didn't have any shape. It didn't have any box. It wasn't a triangle. It was different playgrounds in the end. Where for me, it was, one playground was photography and the modeling aspect, and then I had other playgrounds when it came to just creating a playful environment, living environments to be in. So that would be like bringing on a disco ball in my living room, for instance, or playing around more with scents, and I don't know, grinding cardamom. For instance, I had like this phase for several weeks, but I would just love having fresh cardamom seeds. And
I remember the cardamom phase. Yeah, and that's a really nice way of of illustrating, actually, that, like I said before, these steps can be really, really small. It might not feel right now that it's accessible to you to go out and do your equivalent of a photo shoot in a laundrette, but you can do these little steps, just these little playful, and it can be just for you. It can just be putting up a disco ball in your home because it brings you joy. Right, so let's move on to our next step, which is step 4, which is curiosity and trusting and following your curiosity. So, as I said, this is quite closely linked to step 3, but it's really not important to treat them sequentially or worry about distinguishing between the two. But the curiosity piece can be a bit more structured. This is more the kind of conscious learning that you might be doing, where compared to play, and exploring with the aim of learning something new and not just having an experience. So this may well look like education or courses or training. I wouldn't describe those as play. They have a purpose, but they still don't need to make sense. And that is really important, because if you apply a filter of, does this thing that I'm curious to learn about provide direct value to the yet to be defined next chapter of my life, you will very quickly become stuck. It's really important that you just trust your curiosity. It is enough that you feel that curiosity, that it sparks something for you. That is enough of an indicator that you should follow. For me, this is how I found regeneration as a topic. I think some of you here, certainly on the replay, may have been through the Rebiz or the Tipping Point learning experience that Ryan James offers. That was one of my big curiosities. I heard about the course. I heard about this sort of business through a regenerative lens, through an indigenous worldview, and I was just really curious to learn. I was, it was an immediate yes for me. But I didn't sign up because I thought, oh, regeneration is going to be the next step in my career. I signed up because I felt that the course would answer deep, difficult, burning questions that I couldn't answer on my own. And I didn't approach it with an expectation of some kind of return on investment. I was just there in a very sort of pure, open attitude of learning. And quite honestly, it changed my life. And there were lots of other things that I won't go into now, everything from sort of play invitations from children to hypnosis. And from the advantage point that I have now, I can see that those threads have woven together and how they contribute to what I do now. But I couldn't see that at the time. So there is a lot of courage required here. There is a lot of faith that you can explore these things, you can give them your time, your attention, and that the threads will come together over time. So let me know, what is sparking curiosity for you right now? This is your opportunity to say it out loud and give yourself that commitment that it's something that you're going to follow. What would you love to learn more about for no good reason other than to learn? Tell me in the chat. I'd love, really, I can't get enough of people's curiosity. So I would love to hear what is something that you want to pursue and you want to learn and give some attention to. And you can also go ahead and, note that down on your checklist. So, you might just want to even just list out all the things that interest and excite you. Sometimes, when we're doing this, we're actually really connecting with things that we haven't thought about for a long time. It's really fun to think about, what did you love as a child? What did you want to learn about as a child? Often I hear people say things like, well, I really wanted to do this at college, but then I thought it would be sensible to do this. Or, when I was little, I dreamed about doing this, but then I never came back to it. That's what we're looking for. What were those dreams that you let go of? I really believe that they are the heart of your regenerative calling. So let me know if there's one, if you feel like sharing what that might have been to you. A dream that you had, curiosity, something that you'd pursue. Ooh, Anne-Marie, now you're speaking my language. Oracle cards, and I think, sorry, that I can't see the very corner of this chat. I think it says in green witchery. Oh, we need to have a separate conversation. I went through a whole long stage. I'm still in the stage. I loved it. Yes, great example, right? That was actually, you kind of reminded me, that was a big theme for me. And, and again, this is why I want to give you permission. You don't need my permission, but permission to explore those things, because, at the time it felt kind of silly. It felt almost, it felt very countercultural. It felt like I'm never gonna be able to explain this to anybody. And, and now it's just something kind of in the background of the energy that I bring to my business. And it's really powerful. It doesn't need to be upfront, but it's there. It's all part of the ingredients. Yeah, Sarah says she loves that too. Wonderful. Okay, I'm aware of time. I want to be really respectful of your time. And we have a couple more checkpoints to get through. But there is one point I want to make about curiosity. I won't go into it a lot in detail. I think I'm going to do a podcast episode on this because it's quite detailed. But if you like, you could think about starting to map out your kind of curiosity exploration a little bit. You can do it in whatever way that you like. You might just want to kind of keep a notebook of, this conversation, this book, this article, this course, just somewhere that you've kind of captured it, because I think it's really helpful to be able to look back when some time has passed and start to kind of piece together some themes. This is the thing about finding a regenerative calling. It is not going to be some predefined calling that somebody else hands to you. You are going to need to create it. And you are probably going to create something that hasn't been done before, something completely new, right? That is the opportunity, the challenge ahead of you. So what better way than to pull from all of that curiosity and the themes and ideas and connections that come up. I've had a client who did this, who came out of corporate America and big tech and moved into regenerative agriculture. That wasn't a predefined path for her. She found these little kind of breadcrumb trails of curiosity until it started to all piece together. Okay, big one coming up. Reframe internal dialogue. Now, when I say reframe internal dialogue, no, hold on a minute, I have missed one. excuse me, we're going back, I'm getting carried away. Cultivate supportive relationships. Right, this one kind of just speaks for itself, but you need community. We are not meant to do this alone. We are not meant to reinforce the cult of individualism. Get yourself a community. That's it. I'll say no more. Okay, 3 quick ways that you can do this, because as I said, this can feel like lonely work and we don't need this to feel lonely. So find yourself a community, whether that it can be online. You know, one of the things I love to do with people is to rewild your LinkedIn feed. If you haven't done this, I highly recommend it. Just follow people who talk about the kind of world that you want to see, whether that is, you know, conservation, rewilding, biodiversity, regeneration, whatever it is. And at the same time, ease back from the stuff that doesn't make you feel good, right? Ease back from, if you come onto your feed and you just see promotion after promotion and, very much kind of corporate America speak. For me, because I was in startup world, it was like this constant barrage of funding announcements. Like, we've raised this much, we've raised this much, we've raised this much, we've exited. And I just felt like I'm just in a different world until I just started following people in regeneration, and my community became a really special place. So do this online, think about local volunteering. That's a really great way to connect with people. It doesn't even have to be, again, volunteering, often we can think of this as a stepping stone to the next career. Just think of this as a way of connecting. Yes, someone's saying here, decoupling from productivity or a career move eases the pressure and stress. Absolutely. So really important to surround yourself with that community. Of course, part of that can also be not doing this alone. Can look like having an expert guide by your side. I am one of those guides, but there are many people out there who do this kind of work. There are many fantastic learning programs that you can be a part of. Don't let this be a lonely journey. Okay, so now we will come on to reframing internal dialogue. This is something that you are going to need to do all the way through, right from today, all the way through. And when I say reframing internal dialogue, I think really what I mean is reframing the internalized corporate voice that we all have, whether or not we've actually been in a corporate job, because it influences all of us. Many of you have shared in the chat already some examples of this, like that we need to grow up and be productive, right? And that everything needs to sort of make sense sequentially and contribute towards the career, and it all needs to make sense. Unless you were perhaps raised in a First Nations culture, the chances are that you've been taught to believe that your productivity and your value are directly related. You've been taught to prize efficiency and exponential growth and linear progress. And, some of those things are fine in their place, but they are not natural. For me, the most important thing about choosing a regenerative career path is not actually about what you do, it is about how you do it. It is the relationship you build with yourself and with your community and with the ecosystems around you through your work. And I think those of us on that path will be in a continual process of unraveling and assessing and watching out for that old conditioning creeping back in. Speaking for myself, I feel its pull every single day. I feel its pull every day. Is this resonating? What are the kind of thoughts that show up for you? Because it's really important to say them out loud or to write them down, whichever you're more comfortable with. When we can see them in front of us, we can then immediately notice that they are not our thoughts. So a really big one for me, as I mentioned, was you're wasting your time. I think Raoul mentioned about this as well. You're wasting time. You're becoming irrelevant. That was a big one. Before I came to this work, I was, a well-known, well-respected CEO, and I liked that. I'll be honest, my ego liked that. Okay, and then I didn't do the expected move of, maybe going into consultancy or board positions and things like that. I didn't do what most people do when they sell their business. And I felt like I was becoming irrelevant, and I had that thought, you're becoming irrelevant. But when you're aware of those thoughts and when you have them kind of right out in front of you, their power is immediately diminished. So be brave and share what some of those thoughts are and just look out for them. Oh, Inez has one here. I'm betraying my former colleagues' industry. Wow, That's a really big one. Yes, these are heavy thoughts, but when we put them out there, we notice that they are not us. They are something separate to us. We are not them. And that's the thing to remind ourselves. So just really notice that negative self-talk or those limiting beliefs and challenge those thoughts, particularly around productivity or attainment or achievement. Really, really watch out for those, because as I say, those are not rooted in nature. And also practice self-compassion, because they will come up, and that's okay. And just like we talked to your fear earlier, we can say, okay, I know you're having the thought that you're getting lost, and that's okay. That's okay. All right. The final step, connect your skills to regenerative work. So this is where you get to be really hands-on and really practical. This is where we move into action. Okay, are you ready? I'm going to just go right into the steps here. So these are just 3 practical steps that you can do whenever you feel ready to do them. List your current skills and strengths in plain and simple terms. This is really important. Do not use industry language. Do not use corporate speak. Do not use any words that wouldn't make sense to a child. This is how you are going to identify those skills and experience that are truly translatable and applicable to really any field. I'll give you an example. I am very good at telling stories. This has been a clear theme through my whole career. I can also help people dream about really big and exciting things, and make that dream into something that is clear and real and that other people get excited about too. You see how I could have put that very easily in corporate about, enrolling people in a vision or something like that? No, I want it in plain and simple language, right? That's how you really understand it. This is kind of your new CV. Because when we use language like this, we stop being attached to a particular industry or organization, and it opens up so many possibilities for me. Okay, so I'm just having a quick check. Okay, yeah, a lot of people resonating with that idea that they're betraying the organization that they work for and that people have believed in them. Yeah, but you don't feel like this is my place anymore. I mean, I think, yeah, well, let's come back to this, because I think this is a common theme, but I think we can also see beyond the organization, because organizations, intentionally or otherwise, tend to shrink down an ecosystem just to that organization. But when we really understand ecosystems, we understand that it's everyone who is affected and around that organization, all the way through the supply chain, to use business terms, the community around it, the living creatures, not just animals that are affected by it. I think when we expand our understanding of ecosystem beyond an organization, I think then we can shift our ideas around obligations. I hope that's helpful. Okay, there's step 2 in terms of connecting your skills and experience to regenerative work. I want you to write a true and beautiful story about where you are in your career. A lot of people feel some kind of shame. We've just been talking about it, right? There's some kind of shame around wanting that change in their career journey. Maybe it's because of obligation to an industry or to an organization or to colleagues. Maybe it's because, as we mentioned before, that there's a sense of like, oh my goodness, there's this gap opening up in my career. How am I going to explain that? Maybe you stepped out something you were very good at and very respected within, and you don't really know who you are without it. That was definitely me. And you worry how on earth you're going to explain all of this, right? Well, I can tell you that Earth knows all about pausing before growth. Okay? Other people worry about how they make the pieces fit. So I just want you to start by writing your story, the whole story, unfiltered. Make it true, make it beautiful. It will probably feel like a story you can never tell to anyone else, but one day, I bet you find that you do. And you may find that you come to love that story and to really own it. When I introduce myself to people, I talk very honestly about my step back from climate tech, about embarking onto the next chapter without a plan, about the wilderness years. That's my beautiful story, and I invite you to write yours. I say number 3, take daily steps in the right direction. This is really what I'm going to leave you with. So if you need to be somewhere else right now, this is the final thing that I want to leave you with. Stop focusing on the destination. That is what all of us do when we think about career change. We think about, what is my next move? Where am I going to end up? What will it look like? Don't put your attention on the destination because you don't know what it is yet. If you did, you wouldn't be here. You'd also have the ability to see the future because our reality is evolving very quickly. None of us knows what the world of work is going to look like, even in the near future. So let that destination go for now and just focus on the next right step. And these steps can be tiny, 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 tiny. Okay, I had a client who was very concerned about health insurance when leaving her job, which is completely understandable. She's in the States, a very valid concern. She set herself the tiny step of researching alternative options for her health insurance. She did that during the week between our sessions. She came back and the sense of freedom that she brought with her into that session was incredible because the fear had gone away as she'd empowered herself with that research. It might seem like such little detail, but really focus on those details, just those little steps that you can take into your regenerative career. All right, so we have gone an hour. I had a feeling I was going to go longer. I'm so grateful for those of you that are still with me and all of the incredible conversation in the chat. I'm looking forward to be able to read that in more detail when we finish. I am going to do a little bit of Q&A in just a moment. So for anyone who has some more time available and wants to stay for the Q&A, start putting your questions now in the chat and I am going to answer them. I also have some pre-submitted questions that I'm going to cover for anyone that's watching on the replay, and you may well learn from listening to other people's questions as well. So we are going to take just a 1-minute break and then I'll be back and we'll do some Q&A.
By now, you probably have a clear idea of what you need to work on. The concepts and tools I've shared today are designed to help you navigate your career transition with confidence and clarity. But you don't have to do it alone. In one-on-one coaching, we'll focus on exactly what's holding you back and unlock it together. I'll teach you powerful tools to regulate your nervous system, rewire your neural pathways, and set clear, actionable steps for your next move. Email me at coaching@regenerativeworklife.com and let me know what you'd like to work on. Together we'll create a coaching package that fits your needs and resources. Let's make your regenerative career a reality.
Okay, let's get into the Q&A. Steph asked about creating a sense of fun or exploration when it comes to thinking about career pivot as opposed to getting overwhelmed. Well, Steph, I hope we have covered that in some detail today, where we've covered the points about play and curiosity. And I hope you also took some inspiration from hearing Ines's story as well. I think the key here is to make it really frivolous to begin with. If you're feeling overwhelmed, then steer away from anything that feels like work. I think at least one person in the chat as well was talking about feeling overwhelmed. So don't make play feel like something else that you have to do, something on your to-do list. You can make it really bite-sized. Play can mean watching the shadows play on the wall, or getting your kids' paints out for 10 minutes. Think of what you loved as a child. That's such a good guide. How can you recreate that? And finally, just give yourself permission to have fun and explore as you want to, because it's right there in your question. You don't need permission from me, Steph, but I will grant it anyway. Play and curiosity, fun and exploration, they're all essential ingredients for building a regenerative career. Okay, let's see. So I also had a question from Joyanne, who said, what advice would you offer to someone making the switch to a regenerative or sustainable career from solopreneurship? Ooh, I love this question. And here's why. I think you are going to be so well prepared if you have been an entrepreneur or a solopreneur. I think the hardest shift to make is when you have been very used to the perceived comfort and security of an organization, and you're not used to navigating away in the world without that structure and that safety net. And I think that's probably actually what's behind what a couple of people have shared in the chat about feeling that kind of obligation to an organization. I suspect that kind of underneath that, there is a fear of what it means to embark on a career without an organization supporting you. But in most cases, not in every case, but in most cases with regenerative work, your work will at least move a lot further in an entrepreneurial direction than it has been before. So you may still end up working for an organization, but it's likely to be a younger organization, an evolving organization. You may well end up in sort of a hybrid situation with kind of some consultancy, self-employment. You may well end up starting a business. So Joyanne, I would say that you have a lot of skills from your experience with solopreneurship that are going to serve you really well on this journey. Okay, quick chat. If anyone in the chat has a question, this is your last chance, so go ahead and get it in there. And Raul, you actually submitted a question, so I'm going to answer it here and you can let me know if I have covered it. So you said, how can I really put in practice in my daily work the regenerative principles that I aim to live aligned with? This is a really, really interesting question. I think it depends on the nature, interesting word, the nature or lack of it in your current work. It may be that there is no possibility to live regenerative principles in your current work. It's very important to be honest with yourself about that, because if you try to make those changes happen in an organization that is not aligned with regenerative principles, you're going to end up feeling like you're banging your head against a brick wall. This is what I see a lot of the time with people in in-house sustainability roles. They put so much energy and passion into making change, but ultimately the purpose of the organization that they work for is to generate profit. Well, if that is the ultimate purpose of your organization, making meaningful sustainability changes is going to be challenging, to put it delicately. So in that case, if you need to stay in your role, then living those principles will happen outside of work. And as I said, episode 4 and 5 of the podcast, they go into that into some detail of what your options are based on your different work situations. But remember, regenerative principles can simply mean building a relationship with a tree that you walk past on your way to work. It can start as simply and locally and as small as that. So I think that is all of the questions that we have. I want to thank you all for coming and joining me here today and sharing this experience. I hope that you feel energized and empowered to put some or all of these steps into action and move forward into a regenerative career that supports both you and the world around you. And as a reminder, if you need one-on-one guidance, I am available for regenerative coaching. You can reach out to coaching@regenerative. Why is this word so hard to say? You can reach out to coaching@regenerativeworklife.com and we will find a package that is right for you. There's the link on the screen. So yeah, reach out to me there and tell me what you want to create in your career. Tell me the challenges that you're facing. And together we will work through those and move you into a career that is truly aligned with nature, climate, and community. Thank you so much.